This presentation in Anegundi emerges from a need felt for curatorial efforts in the field of Indian textiles to move outside metropolitan cities and their usual staging in formal institutional spaces like galleries and museums. It asks of the relevance of material archives to inspire creative makers as well as viewers with general interests in sites of historical significance where artistic thrusts from a distant past inform cultural and economic life today. At a time when such sarees and drapes are primarily defined through the areas of their manufacture in the current states of India, the exhibition is explored through 9 themes which go beyond highlighting distinct aesthetic technical aspects which are common to broader geographies. These themes are the use of fibers in their undyed form or kora, the color red, ikat, stripes and checks, metallic brocades of the Deccan and South India, metallic brocades of the Deccan and Gujarat, traditions of Varanasi handlooms in 2 parts, and global influences. The title of this exhibition is inspired by the English translation of a verse from Muttola Yiram, an anthology of poems in the classical Tamil, which sings praise of 3 monarchs, one each from the Pandyan, Chola, and Chera dynasties. This specific verse is offered to the Chera prince. The land of Kothai, deft wielder of a spear, with poison-tipped, leaf-shaped head, knows no turmoil, except that caused by the water birds. For when the red lilies bloom in the waterlogged fields, the birds panic, thinking the water is on fire. Kora. The sarees here use cotton and muga silk in their undyed form, often referred to as kora, along with silver and gold zari. Their compositions highlight the distinct design and cultural elements of the saree in India and draped garments across South Asia. The border, the end panel or palla, and the field.
This saree was woven in Andhra Pradesh and uses a particular variety of cotton, desi cotton, indigenous cotton, called erapatti or red cotton. This cotton is naturally sort of shaded with this brownish reddish hue, and it's been used very effectively in contrast with this zari border. The border itself, if you look closely, has been rendered in the 3 shuttle technique, which is a very particular technique associated with Northeast India, East India, Southeast India, and moves up to the Deccan. Very, very fine triangular patterns have been created with the 3 shuttle technique, which are perhaps the most intricate scale that can be achieved with the 3 shuttle technique in the Indian subcontinent today.
Red. The textiles here convey the common use of red in India across traditions and creative media, regions, and communities. With diverse aesthetic, cultural, spiritual, and religious symbolism, the color has been rendered in fabric in the subcontinent through natural dyes such as madar, chai, lak, and cochineal before the advent of chemical dyes, where different shades and tones are achieved through specific processes. Along with kora, indigo, and yellow, red forms a distinct palette in historical Indian textiles, an application which continues till now.
This is a traditional gharchola sari from Gujarat. It's worn by women for weddings and very special occasions. At its base is a very fine sari of muslin with brocaded checks forming one layer of the pattern. Within those checks are small patterns which have been rendered in the technique of bandhani, the tie and dye technique, where small portions on fabric are resisted with the help of yarn when it's eventually dyed.
Ikat. The textiles here are created with ikat, a generic term used globally for the technique of pre-loom patterning warps and wefts for hand-woven fabric. This is achieved through a process of tying and resist dyeing of the yarns. Known as bandha and bandhani in India, a particularly geometric repertory of motifs is conventionally associated with Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, and the curvilinear to calligraphic patterns with Odisha. While these form the main regions where the traditions of ikat are practiced in the country today, suggestions which have emerged recently point to its more widespread use in the subcontinent historically, expanding an understanding of their significance to the region and to other parts of Asia.
The exhibition includes several non-sari draped garments as well, like this particular pair of textiles. These are sarongs, the patola from Gujarat, which were produced in Patan, and in the 19th century were exported from Gujarat to Indonesia and other islands of Southeast Asia, where they were stored as heirloom textiles and used in shrines. This kind of industry in Gujarat is believed to have inspired the sarees in silk of Pochampalli, a major ikat handloom center in Andhra Pradesh, of which you see a beautiful example here. Now, both the Andhra Pradesh and Telangana region, as well as Gujarat, are known for a geometrical repertoire of designs and patterns, which is quite different from the ikats of Orissa. Now, this particular saree shows us how in Orissa, ikat is rendered in curvilinear and floral forms. Many of them are, motives of animals, some of them are of religious icons and symbols. And together, Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana and Orissa comprise the main ikat centers of handlooms in India.
Stripes and checks. The textiles here form a distinct feature of Deccan and Peninsular India, that of patterning with stripes and checks. This region includes the states of Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and Tamil Nadu. Such patterns are shared to some extent with textiles in other parts of the country, from the northeast to the west, as well as countries of South Asia. Requiring special effort in the warping of yarns on the loom and insertion of wefts, achieving a successful play of colors and scale in such design layouts are a skill fast disappearing in Indian handlooms. They may offer to creative practitioners of today the possibilities of emerging new directions in Indian fabric for markets at home and abroad.
This design layout is called the Mobagam, and it's a distinct composition associated with the Kanchipuram silk handloom industry in Tamil Nadu. Using the three shuttle technique, which we earlier briefly discussed, this layout renders the saree with three almost equal panels of distinct colors.
Metallic brocades of the Deccan and South India. The saris and draped garments here represent the least researched traditions of the Indian subcontinent, while those attributed to Central and South India share clear common attributes like the use of muslin and fine cotton along with a distinct variety of zari. They equally show connections to features of handloom cloth in the western and northern parts of the country through a decorative repertory of motifs in Gujarat and Varanasi which are drawn from nature. Could the gossamer cottons and silks of Chanderi in Madhya Pradesh be seen as bringing these traditions together towards forms which are syncretic?
This heavily brocaded saree from Kanchipuram is traced to the 1940s, and if you look closely to the texture which forms the field of the saree, you'll find a diamond within a diamond pattern, a beautiful texture, which in Tamil Nadu and some other parts of South India is called the mild kan, or the eye of the peacock. The same design is the base texture also for the Pashmina shawls of Kashmir and is called the Chashme Bulbul, or the eye of the bulbul bird. Interestingly, the very same texture becomes a design for the Paithani sarees border across the Deccan and Maharashtra, Central India, and other parts of South India. So, some of these patterns start indicating to us the idea of shared cultures and how these kinds of designs are really a part of several handloom centers which cannot be pinned down to a singular origin or identity.
Metallic textiles of the Deccan and Gujarat. The textiles here form a distinct group of metallic textiles in cotton and silk from the Deccan and West India, which are observed to share visual and technical features and influences. These include the broad genre of the Paithani, characterized by the use of specialized double interlock complementary weave technique with metallic yarn, and the Asavali of Gujarat, with similarities to certain traditions of brocading in Chanderi and Varanasi. The aesthetic amalgamations visible in this group, as in the previous two, are part of wider processes which have defined the historical and contemporary culture of Deccan and Peninsular India over centuries.
This particular dupatta is a cotton Chanderi dupatta. Today, Chanderi is known for a particular variety of fabric which uses both cotton and silk, but its origins are believed to be in the production of very fine cotton muslin. What this piece also takes us to is the lesser known histories of cotton muslin in the Deccan and South India itself, which has for a very long time been dominated by the history of muslin and cotton in Bengal, in India.
Varanasi 1 and 2. The textiles here are created in Varanasi, with techniques typically associated with its many traditions of hand weaving. The first group includes those which have been acquired from families in South India and Bengal, showing how the handloom center's products reached wide markets beyond the north. The second reveals how a diverse range of influences from the outside in turn have been assimilated into those very handlooms of Varanasi themselves. Together they convey the fascinating nature of one of the country's most prolific brocading ecologies, constantly evolving and responding to new stimuli while retaining its core visual material features.
Now, the three sarees that you see here represent a very interesting phase in the history of Banaras handlooms. From the late 19th century to around the mid 20th century, we see how Banaras handlooms was absorbing influences from European design sources as well as Chinese. And together they started representing this kind of a repertoire, sort of chinoiserie, where Oriental influences along with European sort of come together. We think of Indian handlooms often as static, as incapable of design innovation, and some of these sarees actually point to us from 100 years back how Indian handloom centers have always absorbed contemporary influences and amalgamated them into their design repertoire.
Influences beyond. The textiles here demonstrate that a global dialogue of design influences seen previously was also reflected in regions other than Varanasi towards the late 19th to mid 20th centuries. In turn, Indian motifs and patterns were replicated on mill-made cloth in Europe. This group further reflects two prominent aspects of Indian handmade fabric's role in the colonial period: the assimilation of European aesthetic influences beyond the British and Khadi movement as part of Indian nationalism, eventually leading to its very own subversion. These processes were a part of broader cultural developments within which also rose the Navi sari, the most common form of the drape in India today.
This sari is a baluchari and it's the last sari of the exhibition. Now, these kinds of balucharis were known to have been produced till the late 19th century in Bengal in a very fine silk. And perhaps the only historical sari that we have in India where the master weaver actually signed his name in the woven technique. The name of this master weaver is Dubraj Das, and at a time where we think of the sari as craft, this sari from 100 years back sort of tells us about the aspiration of the master weaver to be acknowledged as an artist in his own right.
I'm going to take you through the main 3 steps that we follow at our studio at Bangalore before we get a textile ready for display. So the first step that we follow is handling and storage. So we use Melinex to roll out the sari and also to roll it back because it doesn't create friction against a tabletop or another surface. We use Tyvek as an outer wrap to protect it from dust and dirt, and also it prevents insects from coming in while we have it under storage. We have the 2 main rollers that we use for storage. For display, it's a different material and a different diameter. But for storage, we use a cotton roller for a cotton sari and a silk roller for a silk sari. So the diameter here that we use is about 2 inches. And if you go higher, it's better, so it causes less stress on the textile. We also use acid-free paper while we layer the textiles for rolling, because then it prevents stains and dust from repeating on the other layers of the saris. With this, we move on to documentation and research before we get on to the main conservation process. We have used a pick glass before, but now we've moved into an advanced technology with the use of a dynolite, which is a digital microscope. So while using this, we go in depth. As you can see the images here, we study the fabric construction of the textile, which is the warp and the weft, to study the count of the textile, whether it's an S twist or a Z twist, and we can even see what kind of zari has been used and the twist of the zari as well. With this, we can find out if there's a split or a tear. We can see how many yarns have been don't exist anymore, and we know what we have to fix when we move to the next stage of conservation. We also have a data logger, which we put in through the drawers of our storage area, and that basically records the humidity levels, the temperature levels of the surrounding areas in our office. The next stage is condition mapping. After documentation like this, we document the skeleton of a textile and we mark out areas using legends that refer to different types of damages. We have stains, we have splits, we have insect infestation, we have adhesive stains, ink stains, and so on. And then there are different tools that we use for those particular stains as well. We use latex-free sponges to pick up dust and dirt, and this is done by gently dabbing the textile and picking it up very slowly, as it's a very slow process if it's a very old textile. We also use entomological pins, which are very thin in nature, and this is mainly used for flattening if the sari and the textile has very hard creases. Because of the nature and the age of the textile, we use needles such as this that won't create a hole, an unnecessary hole in the sari. From this, we move on to the harder creases, and for that we use swap sticks, which are just with your regular cotton, and this is then dipped in ethanol, and then you very gently rub it on the surface of the textile and again pick up the stain, whether if it is an adhesive stain or a colored stain. But you have to be very careful that we don't let the textile bleed from underneath, so we use blotting paper to avoid that. Once the cleaning is done, you move back to your first stage, which is rolling, and you would use a cotton roller or a silk roller depending on your textile, and you would wrap it with a fresh sheet of Tyvek. And this is the process we've followed to bring it here to Hampi. We've packaged them this way, and we use Tyvek strips at each roller end where the sari doesn't sit to prevent less stress. So this is how we've brought the textiles here to Hampi.
I'm Shama Pawar. I'm the founder of the Kishkinda Trust that has been working in Anegundi since 97. It was registered in 97. It works with a concept of rural development in a heritage setting, and it's an inclusive program of communities and the locally available heritage resources.
One of the first few initiatives of the trust was the crafts initiative with the women of Anegundi, where we set up a cottage industry of banana fiber. This is a non-indigenous and a non-endemic, non-traditional craft industry that has been set up and has been running for the last 25 years and continues to run strong. It's thanks to this cottage industry that Anegundi was called Karnataka's first craft tourism village. Today, its identity is very much linked to the craft itself. We work with about 300 women in the area who work primarily in creating the raw material for the craft, and also crochet artisans who then make products out of the rope that is created. Varalakshmi, or Varalaka as she's fondly called and very camera shy, was one of the first women we started working with in '97. And she's the one who brought about the social change in the village, encouraged women to step out of their homes and actually work. And she continues to be our strongest community liaison, and whenever things have to be done on the ground, it's always Varalaka who leads the way.
Throughout TKT's existence, we have always used old houses for various incubations, and whether it was our office, whether it was a cottage industry, whether it was a handloom. In fact, we had handlooms in the village, and our village library. We did rural tourism where we set up these incubators and hosting visitors in village houses. It's something very, very dear to us to use these village homes, because I believe that there is a scale and character to this settlement because of these homes. And when we were discovered by the Registry of Sarees, and Ahalya saw some of our projects, she was very, very interested in exhibiting her beautiful sari collection in one of our homes and some of our homes. And so it falls right in line with what we have always been doing.
Urama House gets its name from the deity Urama. Urama is a culmination of two words, Uru and Amma. Uru meaning a village and Amma meaning mother or a goddess. Here's the shrine of Urama, which is right outside the Urama House in the veranda itself. The shrine makes the space a sort of a semi-private, semi-public space, because we allow devotees to still offer prayers over here. And every year during Diwali, there is a small celebration that happens here within this veranda. Responsible tourism is one of the initiatives of the Kishkinda Trust, and Urama is the responsible tourism arm that provides spaces and experiences to guests visiting Anegundi. It was essential to create experiences of spaces that were authentic within the Anegundi settlement in order to support the crafts initiative that we work with women in the village. Urama House was built in 2007 on the foundations of a much older house as a part of the responsible tourism initiative of the Kishkinda Trust. The house was built to actually accommodate guests visiting Anegundi, and for them to have an authentic place to live and experience the village itself. And therefore, it's been built in a way that it provides a traveler a home, and that too an authentic home to live in terms of not just the architectural style, but also the service and an experience that one might have over here. Amidst the architectural features are these stone steps that jut out from the walls, which are typical of North Karnataka, and wooden pillars on stone plinths that support the roofs. We are now at Sahira's house, which is a beautiful house located on the Royal Street of Anegundi. Sahira's home was taken up by us, the Kishkinda Trust, in 2004 for restoration work, which was sponsored by TEMA, an association based out of Sweden. What is amazing about this house is a lot of the features that are very, very typical to Anegundi, and especially the Royal Street. So a raised platform, which is called the katta, located on the outside, served as an in-between space between the private quarters and the street. This in-between space served many purposes. The katta also provided a space for performing artists who would be visiting villages or traveling on foot. This is an intangible cultural aspect which is linked actually to an architectural feature. And this results in actually providing a space for performance artists to come, maybe sing a bhajana, sing a vachana, or any of the aspects that have to do with the daily life of the people in Anegundi. Tema House on the Royal Street is actually a living space for the family, and there were a lot of modifications that had to be made to this living space to make it a gallery space to house these exhibits. This included boarding up of doors, blocking of skylights because the textiles cannot be exposed to sunlight. We had our own challenges because the house has a gobar floor which continues to be gobar and still houses these priceless textiles, and I think that is what makes this exhibition very, very exciting because it's a multi-perspective on conservation. It goes beyond just conservation of textiles but also conservation of homes and living spaces and how they have been brought into context along with the exhibits themselves. We're now at the Visual Memory Studio, which was constructed as recently as 2017. This is not exactly a heritage house in terms of how old it is, but it certainly used a lot of the traditional architecture and architectural techniques in terms of its construction. Be it the kunbis, which are an architectural feature, which is a rounded edge located on top of the building, or the carved wooden doors, or the stone staircase that juts out from the wall itself, or an inner small courtyard that has been created. This also serves as a living space for tourists who visit Anegundi and hopes to deliver an authentic experience to their stay.
ಜಪಿಸಿ ಕೆಡಲು ಬೇಡ ಸೋಮಸೆ ಕರತನ್ನ ಭಾಮೆಗೆ ಪೇಳಿದ ಮಂತ್ರ ರಾಮ ಮಂತ್ರವ ಜಪಿಸೋ ಯೇ ಮನುಜ ರಾಮ ಮಂತ್ರವ ಜಪಿಸೋ ಕುಲಹೀನನಾದರೂ ಕೂಗಿ ಜಪಿಸುವ ಮಂತ್ರ ಕುಲಹೀನನಾದರೂ ಕೂಗಿ ಜಪಿಸುವ ಮಂತ್ರ ಜಲಜವಾಣಿ ನಿತ್ಯ ಜಪಿಸುವ ಮಂತ್ರ ಜಲಜವಾಣಿ ನಿತ್ಯ ಜಪಿಸುವ ಮಂತ್ರ ಕಲುಷ ಪರ್ವತಕ್ಕಿದು ಕಲಶವಾಗಿ ಮಂತ್ರ ಕಲುಷ ಪರ್ವತಕ್ಕಿದು ಕಲಶವಾಗಿ ಮಂತ್ರ ಸುಲಭದಿಂದಲೇ ಮೋಕ್ಷ ಸುಲಭದಿಂದಲೇ ಮೋಕ್ಷ ಸೂರ್ಯದುಂಬುವ ಮಂತ್ರ ರಾಮ ಮಂತ್ರವ ಜಪಿಸೋ ಹೇ ಮನುಜ ರಾಮ ಮಂತ್ರವ ಜಪಿಸೋ ಮರುತಾತ್ಮಜ ನಿತ್ಯ ಸ್ಮರಣೆ ಮಾಡುವ ಮಂತ್ರ ಮರುತಾತ್ಮಜ ನಿತ್ಯ ಸ್ಮರಣೆ ಮಾಡುವ ಮಂತ್ರ ಸರ್ವ ಋಷಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಸೇರಿದ ಮಂತ್ರ ಸರ್ವ ಋಷಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಸೇರಿದ ಮಂತ್ರ ತ್ವರಿತ ಕಾನನಕ್ಕಿದು ಧಾವಾನಲ ಮಂತ್ರ ತ್ವರಿತ ಕಾನನಕ್ಕಿದು ಧಾವಾನಲ ಮಂತ್ರ ಕೊರೆದು ವಿಭೀಷಣಗೆ ಪಟ್ಟ ಗಟ್ಟಿದ ಮಂತ್ರ ರಾಮ ಮಂತ್ರವ ಜಪಿಸೋ ಏ ಮನುಜ ರಾಮ ಮಂತ್ರವ ಜಪಿಸೋ ಜ್ಞಾನನಿಧಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಆನಂದ ತೀರ್ಥರು ಜ್ಞಾನನಿಧಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಆನಂದ ತೀರ್ಥರು ಸಾನುರಾಗದಿ ನಿತ್ಯ ಸೇವಿಪ ಮಂತ್ರ ಸಾನುರಾಗದಿ ನಿತ್ಯ ಸೇವಿಪ ಮಂತ್ರ ಭಾನುಕುಲ ಬುಧಿ ಸೋಮಾನ್ಯ ನಿಪ ನಮ್ಮ ಭಾನುಕುಲ ಬುಧಿ ಸೋಮಾನ್ಯ ನಿಪ ನಮ್ಮ ದೀನ ರಕ್ಷಕ ಪುರಂದರ ದೀನ ರಕ್ಷಕ ಪುರಂದರ ವಿಠಲನ ಮಂತ್ರ ದೀನ ರಕ್ಷಕ ಪುರಂದರ ವಿಠಲ ರಾಮ ಮಂತ್ರವ ಜಪಿಸೋ ಹೇ ಮನುಜ ರಾಮ ಮಂತ್ರವ ಜಪಿಸೋ ಆ ಮಂತ್ರ ಈ ಮಂತ್ರ ಆ ಮಂತ್ರ ಈ ಮಂತ್ರ ಜಪಿಸಿ ಕೆಡಲು ಬೇಡ ಸೋಮಶೇಖರ ತನ್ನ ಭಾಮೆಗೆ ಪೇಳಿದ ಮಂತ್ರ ರಾಮ ಮಂತ್ರವ ಜಪಿಸೋ ಏ ಮನುಜ ರಾಮ ಮಂತ್ರವ ಜಪಿಸೋ ರಾಮ ಮಂತ್ರವ ಜಪಿಸೋ ರಾಮ ಮಂತ್ರವ ಜಪಿಸೋ